Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us for Climate and Cuisine, our podcast. And today's guest is Dr. Sailesh, the Executive Director of Climate Healers, and I am your host, Jane DeMarinis, and I'm the Executive Director of Climate Diet. Dr. Rayo, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Dr. Rayo, I know you back not so long ago, but 3 years ago, when you were doing a news conference at COP26 in Glasgow, Scotland, at the UN conference of the parties, climate conference. And you had a lot to say there, and I didn't yet know you. Glenn Mercer's book was being passed out on the street, or sort of a small version of it. So I got to know about Glenn. And Glenn told me immediately about you when I met him. But could you talk a little bit about what you told that audience there and how important it was to get out there to this international group that are concerned with climate?
Yeah, we had created this model called the climate bathtub model, which explains how we need to be shutting down our activities in order to address the climate. What should we be addressing first? And we had modeled it as, the killing machine and the burning machine. And all the talk at the COP is always about the burning machine. It's about cutting down fossil fuels. Whereas the killing machine, we think is, it's sacrosanct. We cannot touch it. And we were claiming actually the other way around. We have to address the killing machine first. And only then can you turn down the burning machine slowly. There's the killing machine. There is nothing that does not improve when you shut down the killing machine. Because we kill like 80 billion land animals and 1 to 3 trillion sea animals every year.
It's unbelievable.
I know. And it has a huge impact, not only in terms of land use, also in terms of, the health of the ocean, the health of biodiversity, all of the other issues that the UN is addressing, like the biodiversity loss, ecosystem collapse. And climate change is actually the third issue.
Extinction is connected to it as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Extinction is connected to it as well. So that was what the news conference was all about, that you need to address the killing machine first. And only then can we tackle the burning machine. And I see at the UN conferences, meat being served in the cafeterias, which makes absolutely no sense. It tells me that they're not serious about addressing it. And so after COP26, we resolved that I will not attend any more COPs until it is 100% vegan. Because that tells me that they are serious, right? Because I've attended so many of these meetings as an engineer when we were working on the internet. And if I had thought for one moment that the meetings were all talk and no action, I would not have gone to any of them. Because as engineers, we work on solving problems. And to me, climate change is a problem that you have to solve with engineering integrity. And when the meetings are happening without engineering integrity, I really don't want to attend them anymore.
Well, you are a visionary in bringing this topic to the public's attention. And I came about it when I frankly heard about the report that talked about the huge impact of meat and livestock production on the climate. And it was kind of simultaneous with you doing that news conference, frankly. And but nobody else was talking about it. And it was great to find out about you and to find out, and Glenn Mercer's book did a little bit, but there really were so few people talking about it. I know that you've, so take it a few steps forward. That caused you to create a training program, your own version called the V-COPs, your own Convergence. And so maybe you'd like to take a minute to talk about those. I know there's one coming up in November. I've attended them and had the opportunity to speak at them. And so thank you for including me in such prestigious presentations, frankly, and so needed for this country. But if you could talk a little bit about sort of the evolution of those and how
Right.
they still work.
Yeah. So, after I came back from Glasgow, I said we need to, because we were doing these vegan convergences before that also. We were
Oh,
doing,
really?
yeah.
Okay.
But we were calling it vegan convergences, Vegan World 2026 convergences. That's what the goal was, right? Vegan World 2026. And but then after Glasgow, I said, let's call it the vegan convergence of the peoples, because that's really what we are doing, where we are putting veganism front and center as part of the solution to climate change, which no one else wants to talk about. And I'm saying if you don't talk about shutting down the killing machine, which is really what the veganism is all about, then you're not yet serious, which is what our models were saying. And no one has even, told me that what is wrong with my model. Because as engineers, you first create a model to solve the problem, and then the model tells you how to implement the solution in real life, and then you measure what reality is telling you and see whether it matches the model. That's how engineers work, right?
I was
So
going
I
to say
created a model.
the fact that you're an engineer brings, a discipline and knowledge, maybe that some of the people that really are more policy oriented may lack. So
Right.
I think, you came up with the solution through your own huge background that is technical and systems oriented.
Yeah, I used to work on the internet, I mean, in fact, we are talking over a link that I designed actually. Yeah. Because my laptop still has the link that I designed 20 years ago.
Wow.
Uh,
Well, my brother-in-law, Victor DeMarinis, was also involved in the early part development of the internet through the Department of Defense.
I see. Yeah,
I don't know
okay.
if you guys ever knew each other, but anyway, uh,
Yeah.
but that's impressive. I would like
Because,
to also go back to, you have done a lot to stir up interest. I know you've worked with the mayor of New York, who is
mm,
vegan and had his own transformation from having gone at least partially blind, if not nearly fully blind,
mhm.
and getting his sight back through being a vegan. So it'd be great to have you talk a little bit about that. And then after that, you've been on the international stage again with Oxford University and some very well-known debates. I would love for you to tell our audience about those as well. But if you could start with Mayor Adams, because that resulted in some pretty fantastic changes with the hospital system in New York City.
Yeah, Mayor Adams has been the forefront of trying to bring, lifestyle changes as a solution to some of the chronic diseases we face. Because, 90% of the healthcare economy is based based on 15 chronic diseases. And we know that those 15 chronic diseases are caused by like 8 risky behaviors in human beings. And those number one of those is poor diet.
Yes.
Then comes lack of exercise, smoking, and all the others, lack of health screening, poor stress management, lack of adequate sleep, and poor standard of care. And finally, the eighth one is excessive alcohol consumption. Okay. So they're responsible for these 15 chronic diseases that cost 90% of the healthcare costs in the world, which means that they're responsible for 90% of the healthcare economy. And those who are trying to grow the economy, which is their mandate, are trying to grow these diseases. And so it's very hard to get policy through that addresses lifestyle changes that are needed to solve these 8 risky behaviors, beginning with good diet. Okay? And
Well, Dr. Neil Bernard, and to follow up on what you're saying, says that 15-year-olds are already suffering from clogged arteries
yeah,
from the saturated
right,
fat from meat. But
right.
I think it's not widely known. And
Yeah. It's getting worse and worse and worse because our impetus is always to grow the economy. Everybody talks about growing the economy. And if you want to grow the healthcare economy, you need to have more and more patients. You know, that's that's what the mindset is, right? And so it's very rare to find a politician who steps up and says, no, 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 I want the health of my people is number one, more paramount than growing the economy, right? And
So many
so,
diseases are treatable
yeah,
with
just simple
plants,
lifestyle changes.
right?
Simple, In fact, Dr. McDougall, who passed away recently, he told me that half of those costs are from poor diet alone.
I believe
So
that.
more than half, yeah.
I bet it's more than, yeah, more
More
than
than half is from poor diet alone. So Mayor Adams has stepped forward and he has instituted all these policies in New York hospitals where they serve plant-based meals, so healthy plant-based meals as default. And if the patient really insists on getting meat, they can get it, but they will get a visit from the doctor explaining to them why they shouldn't be doing that. Okay.
that's
So
good.
it sort of puts it says the health is the default. And we should be actually teaching our children how to be healthy first, as opposed to teaching them how to do math first, I mean, they need to be healthy. How can they be healthy if they're being fed food that's making them sick?
Yeah.
I
Also,
mean, this is
it's
why
so
the
cool.
USDA requirement that every school has to provide dairy milk to students is completely detrimental to the health of Americans because it's attacking the children of America, making them drink things that are not good for them in the long run. And for all people of color, most of them are lactose intolerant.
I'm
And they
Eastern
make it so
European,
hard,
and a
Yeah,
lot of Eastern Europeans are lactose intolerant
right.
here.
It makes
Also,
it so hard for them to, they make it so hard for them to opt out of that. And they don't get any substitute for it. So this is why I say the USDA is doing a great disservice to Americans by promoting dairy in schools. And
absolutely.
yeah,
It's those powerful, lobbyists working on those, not to mention pharma. You're right about the economy and making it grow, but it's not
right,
growing in a good way.
right.
Um,
Yeah.
but
So
there certainly is growth though in the plant-based food area, and you see more young people. I think I know you have a granddaughter, Kamaya, right?
mm,
I
mm,
think she's a vegan, right?
yeah. So yeah, I mean, she goes to a private school where she has the option of eating, you know, they're not mandated to give out dairy milk
Okay,
in private schools. Yeah.
but I
But
do
public
think
schools, they're all mandated to do that.
I think some schools are having some options. There was a lawsuit from a student in California that sued the
Mm,
Board of Education because she was promoting plant-based milk. And I don't know if that's gone to the trial, but I know they were viewing it around the free speech
right.
versus I don't know what else it would have been, but a free speech issue.
Yeah.
Have you heard if there's any resolution to that?
Yeah, she won.
Okay, great.
They settled with her, and so now students are allowed to come and talk about plant-based milks, if
Hopefully
they
they'll
want to.
serve it too, not just
Yeah,
talk
they
about
should serve it. They don't serve it. This is why we need to fight for that. We need to take back the USDA from the clutches of the industry. I mean, this is our government. Isn't it the government of the people, by the people, for the people? So why isn't the government looking out for us? Why is the government just looking out for the dairy industry? You
Well,
know?
at one time, the biggest part of our economy probably was farming, but those days are gone, and the medical profession should be having some influence if it were more astute to uh, to bring their own expertise about the value of plant-based eating. For my own transition to plant-based eating, a family member needed quintuple bypass surgery, even though that family member was not overweight, was a
Mm,
runner, got healthy, but had five. So that family member got pneumonia and went to the hospital and had an X-ray, and they said, "Oh, all you're not leaving, not because of the pneumonia, but you might not make it because all your arteries are completely blocked." Or I think they're out of
mm,
five, one was 90% and the rest were 100% blocked. Um, and our daughter sent us the China study. And after reading that, we just became vegetarians and vegans
yeah.
immediately.
Right. Right.
But so I came to it through that mechanism of health, but it's such a clear statement on what can happen to you. If he hadn't, it was just luck that he got pneumonia, frankly.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, but we are all being woken up, in that sense, one by one by one. This is why, the Oxford Union debate that you brought up is so relevant, because that debate was conducted at Oxford University, and the audience was mostly students and professors from Oxford University. And they had, so the Oxford Union is actually separate from the university in the sense it's run by students.
Okay.
As an organization on its own, and a lot of the Oxford students are members of the union, Oxford Union.
So I know you won that debate, but can you tell our audience who you debated?
Yeah, so there were actually four speakers for the proposition and four speakers against the proposition.
Okay.
And the proposition was this house would go vegan. Okay, this house would go vegan. So which means literally the world should go vegan. And so there were four of us speaking for the proposition. I was speaking from an environmental perspective. Dr. Chidi and Bagua was speaking from a health perspective. And then Joey Copstrong was speaking from an ethical perspective. And the president of the Oxford Union was Disha Hegde at that time, and she was speaking from a student's perspective for the future, right? And the other side, they had four speakers against us, including Katie Hopkins from an ethical perspective, she's a well-known personality in the UK. She was speaking against it. And then they had two students from Oxford who spoke, and another professor from Oxford, not from Oxford, from the UK, who spoke on the environment. Now, at the end, so it's like each one of us gets 10 minutes to speak, and then the audience can interject and ask questions in between. And at the end, the audience vote. Every member of the audience votes either for the proposition or against the proposition by walking out either through the left of the door or to the right of the door. And there are counters who check. And we won. So when we won that debate, it was a signal to me that the future generation, the future is vegan.
Yes.
Meaning the students are saying the future is vegan. The elites in the world, the Oxford students are saying the future is vegan. And if you know that the future is vegan, you need to seize it as quickly as possible. Because there is no time for us to sit around,
Yeah, the trees being cut down.
I'm in Phoenix, Arizona, and Phoenix just yesterday, we had the 100th day continuously with greater than 100 temperature. And it's never happened before.
I put that out yesterday in my Climate Wednesday data. Yeah, the Post had quite a big article about that with a graph. Yeah, horrible. And it's I was surprised to read it. I know things are hot.
Yeah.
Hotter, but 100 days in a row of 100 degrees is something abnormal.
It is. It's never happened before, so it's a record. And if you look at the prediction for the next 10 days, we still have a few more days to go.
Really?
Yeah. It's at 113, 114 yesterday. Yeah.
Well, the electric grid must be just maxed out with,
AC,
is running continuously.
It's not just the electric grid, the water tables get dried up. I mean, everything, it impacts everything, right? And so it's making life harder and harder for all of us. And for what? Just another burger? I mean, right. Because if we just go vegan today, we will literally return 40% of the land area of the planet back to nature. And when we bring back the original forests on that land, you will reverse climate change.
Sailesh, could you repeat that data? Did you say 14% or 40%?
40%.
Wow.
40% of the ice-free land area of the planet will be returned back to nature if the world goes vegan today. Okay, and we don't bring any more animals into the world, and we let the animals who are there kind of die off on their own because they don't live that long. We have genetically modified them so that they don't live that long. So they are designed to put on weight so fast that they just cannot even stand up on their own legs. Some of these animals that we bring into the world.
It's a cruel business.
It is a horrible business.
Cruel, unethical business.
Yeah. And it's a tragedy that this cruel business has taken over our government. The USDA is basically doing whatever they want. And so if we did that, if the world goes vegan today, then we will return 40% of the land back to nature. And on that land, if we just restore the original forest that used to be there, our calculations are showing that we will reverse climate change. Not address it, we will reverse it. So the question is, it's a choice you're making 3 times a day, whether you want climate change or not.
I think that's the thing that is so important. So many people think, oh, okay, I'll buy an electric vehicle and I'm doing my part for climate change. Well, you don't drive your car as much as you eat 3 times a day. Maybe you drive to work, but so many people, frankly, are now working remotely. But an EV isn't the main answer.
It's not even, no, EV does not do anything to reduce reduce the CO2 in the atmosphere. All it's doing is preventing it from adding more, at best, right? But even to make the EV, you had to burn a bunch of fossil fuels.
So,
right?
Sailesh, could we, I love the fact that you won that debate. And I know there was a second debate. I was wondering if George Monbiot, that wrote Regenesis, which really talks about the deforestation and the soil depletion from agriculture in the UK, was he a part of it, or did anyone reference his recent work?
Yeah, no, he was not a part of the Oxford Union debate, but I think because he was busy or something at that time.
Okay.
Yeah, but he did have his own debates in Cambridge, I think, with Alan Savory, who was talking about regenerative animal farming. And no matter how you farm the animals, you're using so much land. Okay, there is no way around it. And when your animals are on that land, you cannot allow tigers to be on that land. Can you? Right? No wild animals can be on that land because the wild animals are eating what your animals want to eat. So this is why animal agriculture is the leading cause of not only climate change, but also biodiversity loss, ecosystem collapse. And when you shut down animal agriculture, you will literally heal the planet. So all 6 planetary boundary transgressions, you will reverse. And that was my speech at the Oxford Union, And so it's staring at us in the face. As an engineer, I know that's a solution that's staring at us in the face.
Sailesh, I wonder if we could get you to the Washington, D.C. Press Club. I don't know how many press were at the first news conference you did in the UK. I know a lot of journalists were there because I wasn't able, my husband and I went to it, but we weren't able to get into a lot of the meetings. We just registered too late. I had just started the organization and we said, let's go. We got to make connections. And it was a good place, but not as good as I would have expected. But did the press give your speech or your news conference an adequate amount of coverage at that time?
Well, the press has been trying to avoid this issue. Okay, so, but we did get a mention in the Guardian newspaper for what we were doing, during COP26.
Well, they're certainly well read. I think they're an impressive group of journalists.
But it's one of those things that everybody seems to know, but they don't want to talk about it.
Yes.
Everybody knows it. I mean, all the climate scientists know it. Okay, they're not pretending not to know it, because if they say it, they lose their funding. So it's through that mechanism of funding that we are sort of conning ourselves, deceiving ourselves into not addressing the problem correctly. So I say that this is like trying to do a moon landing project run by economists and politicians.
Yeah.
How in the hell are you ever going to get someone to go to the moon? When economists and politicians are driving or are designing the spacecraft. Same thing, right? We have a problem. We know that engineers are the specialists who know how to solve problems. This is what we are trained to do.
Right.
But the engineers are not being given a free hand to actually solve the problem.
At one time, I know you were trying to, or thinking of trying to organize a group of engineers to do it more formally. And I don't know if you've had time to pursue that or if you intend to in the future.
Yeah, see, we did want to do that. But unless, see, all engineers that I approach, they say, okay, what backing do you have?
Oh,
Where is your financial backing to do this, right? Because you can all sit down and figure out a solution. And my model is not that hard to understand. I even presented it to my engineering colleagues. And they said, yeah, we, we see the model is telling you to shut down the killing machine as quickly as possible. And in fact, you shouldn't be turning off the burning machine as quickly as possible because that's stupid. You're going to make things worse by doing that. Okay, because
I mean, all you have to do is look at the temperatures, and you don't even have to look at your model. Just look at how hot it's becoming, and the extreme weather, and the storms are getting worse and worse, and
right.
the cities on coasts are going to be devoured. New York City, I can't imagine what their future looks like and how costly that will be.
You cannot keep going this way. That's for sure, right? So this is why the students have already said, we are not going to go this way. Okay. So the younger generation is waiting for the older generation to step up and start doing things that are in the best interest of the world, as opposed to their own self-interest.
Absolutely.
So the younger generation is already frustrated and fed up with us as a generation, those of us who are in power, right? And so I say that we don't have a choice. We can't keep saying, oh, let them solve the problem. We will just stick with what we know and we're going to die off and then they'll solve the problem. We don't have time for that. So we don't have time. This is what nature has been sending us all these signals saying, wake up now, otherwise I'm going to kill you.
Well, the meat industry has been fined by the Biden administration for price fixing. That happened during COVID, which was a very sad time when people were losing their jobs and were sick, to punish them by taking advantage of them and charging the highest prices for meat.
Right.
And the Biden administration took some action there against them, but it also shows sort of where they come from, that at a time of deep sorrow in a country that was losing, in a world that was losing so many people to a serious communicable disease, COVID, that they would be price fixing and taking advantage of people.
I mean, COVID, again, all these pandemics come from the meat industry anyway.
Right? That's right. It came from
they're
the
originating it, and then they're making money off of it. And even the Biden administration, instituted a Discover Dairy program in schools, and then they now have created a climate smart beef program. And it's like, where are we? Where is the leadership that actually addresses the problem honestly with integrity?
I think there's some rumors that candidate Harris may be not vegan, but reduced meat consumer, or she may be a vegetarian. I don't know. I've just seen those, and I don't have any proof that they're true. I don't think she's talked about it. But have you heard this yourself?
Well, we need to hold, no matter who wins, we need to hold our leaders' feet to the fire, because and hold them responsible, because ultimately everything that we are doing is being recorded in history. It's all on the internet. You cannot escape it anymore. And future generations are going to look back and know that this is what we did. And it doesn't look good for our generation right now. Okay, so
absolutely,
I say, we have a responsibility to solve this problem honestly and with integrity, as engineers would do. I use the example of engineering, the engineering, because this is engineers are the problem solvers. Okay, this is what we're trained to do. If you just leave us alone and say, here, solve this problem and hold us responsible for solving it, we'll fix it. Yeah? We know how to do this.
I was going to ask you, you've been on many stages, but does your senator, I know Liz Cheney is, I don't know, is she running again? I can't remember. I know she dropped out of the race, so I don't think she's running again. But I'm not sure who the senators are or congressmen in your area. Are any of them sort of open to this kind of discussion that could be helpful to moving it forward?
I mean, I can write to them. And so far, whenever I write to them, I don't get a response to this question. Because everybody is scared of touching this third rail of politics, the meat industry, the meat and dairy industries. And it shouldn't be this way, because Americans are suffering because of this industry. Americans are suffering because of all the chronic diseases. I mean, we are the most overweight population in the world. How could that be good for us? And who is really taking care of it?
Sailesh, before we end, do you want to bring up some of the topics that people in your next Convergence that's coming up November 9th and 10th, mention some of the topics there, and if we can invite our listeners to join in? I know you offer them for free.
So we have both. So the next Convergence in November 9th and 10th will be both in person and online. So in person, we are meeting in Scottsdale, Arizona.
Oh.
And online, of course, on Zoom. But we used to do this once a year. We used to meet in person, and then after COVID, we stopped. And so now we are saying, okay, let's meet one more time, at least in person, because a lot of things get done when we come together and spend time together, Absolutely. And we are focusing on the vegan rewilding solution to climate change, biodiversity, all the problems, right? So you go vegan and rewild the planet. So it's a simple idea. The world goes vegan and we start rewilding the planet. So that changes our purpose as a species. Instead of extracting from nature, we'll be restoring nature. So it's a different way of organizing ourselves. And we're going to be talking about how do we organize ourselves for doing that, and how do we involve indigenous people and, school children and everybody in this project. It's going to be a global project, because we have to first feed ourselves healthy food. All of us have to get access to healthy food, and we'll be planting the trees that used to be there in our neighborhood when it was forested, right? So you're restoring the ecosystems of the planet.
So you actually are having a tree planting as part of the Convergence.
We will, we're going to be planning for that, yeah?
And, well, that's great.
Yeah.
I would like to attend in person, so I'm glad to hear about this.
Yeah, please come. Please come. So we're meeting at Natural Grocers in Scottsdale, and both Saturday and Sunday.
Great. I haven't been out to your city for quite a long time.
Yeah, because we also know of examples where this has worked, where people, so we have a vegan community that's restoring the forests in India. And they have done an amazing job in 20 years. They've been doing it for 20 years.
So it's interesting what a role trees play in so many things, but one, in keeping the temperature cooler. And I served on a tree committee in the last neighborhood I lived in, because there was a lot of clear cutting of trees when new houses were being built. And that was happening. I'm a close-in suburb in the southern part of Maryland, or well, not really the southern part, the part that's north of the city, but it's the southern part of Montgomery County. And all these trees were just being cut down needlessly. And I testified before the county council of Montgomery County. And at that time, we talked about trees changing the temperature by 10 degrees. But I've read more recently, they actually reduced the temperature by as much as 25 degrees.
Yeah.
And so people don't, I don't know how people don't know this, but
Yeah,
it's like it will cool the earth the more trees we get,
right.
and it's our oxygen is coming from plants and trees, so it does so many things to Earth at such a small cost.
Yeah. I mean, we have cut half the trees on the planet as humanity over the last
Have we?
10,000 years.
Wow.
So we have reduced the number of trees on the planet from 6 trillion to 3 trillion.
Wow. That is
And that,
sad.
but all we have to do, but that's the solution is sitting there. If you bring back those 3 trillion trees that we cut, we can reverse climate change. We can reverse biodiversity loss. We can reverse ecosystem collapse. All the problems that the UN has been talking about for 30 years without doing anything about it, we can reverse it. We can actually solve those problems if the UN would just wake up and do this. But
I
we have
was
to first go vegan, right? If we don't
right.
go vegan, then you'll still be using that land for growing animals. Yeah.
I was pleased recently. I think I was Googling to look for some data um, to support something I was writing, and environmental work group came up, and I know of them. I'm not so familiar with them, but they had a huge amount of plant-based information kind of on their homepage. And so I'm not sure what the mission of that organization is, but I don't think it was much around the food. And so I was pleased that this message has gotten through to them, and they're
Yeah.
promoting it in a big way. I don't know if you've worked with that group at all. They seem to have quite a big staff. So, again, I don't think they were in this part of the environmental, message and environmental work, but they seem to be now.
Yeah, no, I'm glad the work that they're doing because they were the ones who filed the Freedom of Information Act request from the USDA for this climate smart beef that the USDA approved. And they got back 100 pages of redacted documents. There's nothing there.
Really?
Yeah. So then they filed a petition with the USDA saying that there should be no such thing as climate smart beef because it doesn't exist.
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's good. That's good to know. Well, Salish, it's just so great to have you on our podcast. I hope you will come back. I want to come to the Convergence, and I think it's very exciting that you're doing it in person. The Zoom ones are great too. But thank you for your leadership in this topic and your role that's international in scope. And let's continue to work together to do what we know needs to be done.
It's my pleasure, Jane. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And that concludes our exciting and educational podcast with Dr. Sailesh Rayo, the head of Climate Healers and a renowned, debater in in the UK, and doing so much international work. So thank you again, Sailesh, for being a part of this podcast today.
My pleasure.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.